We are very honored and proud to have three distinguished guests with us today as part of our panel discussion on content management and content strategy. First, we have, to my far left, we have April O'Neill, who is a business process manager for McKesson Technology Solutions, a Fortune 15 healthcare IT company. She has 15 years of experience as a technical communicator, and she caters to a customer base of more than 17,000. She's responsible for a variety of initiatives, including content management, contributions to overall content strategy, and knowledge governance. Next, we have Colleen Jones, the CEO of Content Science. She has nearly 20 years of experience and has led strategic initiatives for Fortune 50 companies, government agencies, and boutique brands. She regularly consults with executives to improve their strategies and processes for content. She has also co-founded a content evaluation platform, which I mentioned earlier, ContentWRX, ContentWRX, which you
ContentWRX.
ContentWRX is better.
Content
WRX.
So you're right in both counts.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And then to my immediate left, we have Lisa Janak Newman, who is Public Affairs Officer for the Georgia Emergency Management Agency and Homeland Security. She's been Public Affairs Officer for GEMA for over 10 years, where she disseminates emergency information before, during, and after natural and man-made disasters and national security events. She supports all levels of government during local emergencies and widespread disasters. So, we've got a couple of questions that we have, and then a couple of questions that you have contributed yourself when you actually registered for GovTalks. So we'll go through some of these questions, and then at the end we'll give you a little bit of opportunity to ask your own questions as well. So the first question, and I'll direct this to you, April, is how do you keep your content from becoming stale and outdated? That's something we talked about a little bit earlier, but I wanted to get your views on that.
So, I'm not sure if I'm on. There we go. No?
No.
No. On. Maybe. Okay, I'll talk really loud. How about that? So, at McKesson, we're a huge company. We have nearly 20,000 employees, and I'm responsible for the content on our customer portal. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Responsible for the content on our customer-facing portal, which, again, Peter talked about, has about 17,000 registered members. And the way that we keep content fresh, I have content authors, or you called them content contributors. They work in marketing, they work in services, they work in support, and I regularly have contact with them to say, hey, what's going on in your world? Webinars, industry events. We talk about an editorial calendar on a regular basis, because what I don't want, and you guys have experienced this before, that you get to sort of the end of the month and they're like, I don't know what I'm going to be talking about next month. Well, no, we don't want that. I need to know that you're strategic about the content that you want to talk about. And also, I would say about 15 people in marketing. And it's funny because on the way over here, Lisa and I were talking, and one of her former managers was a content author for me. So it's a small world. And I just like to be very, like I said, strategic about what you're placing in the CMS on a regular basis, so that you're not surprised by not having content at the end of the month. So. Oh, I've got one other thing. Dang it. I've got one other thing. We have human interest stories at McKesson. So these are things that you might see on SharePoint. So it talks about things like, well, Colleen did a great job with this particular customer, or yeah, or 3 people were highly involved in this strategic effort to help a customer get a life-saving drug. So I repurpose that content on our portal because our customers would love to hear about that. Yes, as employees, we're proud, but we would love to be able to share that content with our customers as well. So reusing current content.
Colleen, why don't you talk a little bit about content strategy? I mean, April mentioned a little bit about strategic, goals, and content strategy. I think is a somewhat new term within government, and we're still really learning what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So content strategy is exactly what it sounds like. It is getting strategic about your approach to content. So it's having a plan or an approach to developing or providing useful, usable content for your users or whoever it is that you're trying to reach. And so April has been talking about creating content in order to provide the right content to people, and creation is certainly a big part of content strategy. Planning that creation is really important to keeping your content fresh, keeping it from going stale. But another component, usually, of content strategy is curation. So you might not necessarily need to create new content for every single purpose or every kind of need that your stakeholders have. You might be able to take content that you already have and put a fresh spin on it, curate it, highlight it in a different way, and that can meet your need. And that, at the same time, helps you minimize the amount of content that you create and put out there. So just as a quick example, let's say that it's time for small businesses to renew their licenses. And you have some great content that you put some good effort into with your stakeholders that explains the process for renewing that small business license. And it doesn't really change that much year to year. And so you've got that already. What you need to do at renewal time is just curate that content. So feature it on your website, your social media if you have it, or in your email, whatever locations make sense for you and your web presence. And give it a title, a description, or teaser that highlights why it's relevant right now, why people need to look at this right now. And that can go a long way to meeting the goals of a content strategy.
Thank you. Lisa, this is something we talked about a little bit earlier, and I think we've got the crowd fired up that content is important now, and we've talked a lot about cleaning up content, vetting content that's going to be going up, and certainly trying to update. But what happens when we go back now and we go and upper management is sitting there and they want to put up something up on the website? We had mentioned this, that is probably more political than strategic, and that they don't really understand the importance of content strategy and cleaning up. How do you get buy-in from the agency to try to go in and overhaul that content?
Well, we kind of approach it a little bit differently. And first I want to say that we have 3 websites at GEMA. We have our regular GEMA website, we have Ready Georgia, and we have Praise and Preparedness. So for our GEMA website, we've actually assigned people in each division to be content managers. So they're responsible for keeping their content fresh for whatever division that they're in. However, we don't want people posting anything on the website, so we do have a system of checks and balances. So before anything gets published, it comes to public affairs, so we can review it and say, okay, that's appropriate for our website. This information is correct. Make sure that the terminology is something that everyday Georgian can understand. And we also get buy-in from our executive staff beforehand so that they know what type of content we're looking for. They have input into everything, and we're able to work with them before, so it's not, we don't get this dropped on our lap all of a sudden. They should know what our goals are going into it, so and they should be able to support those goals.
Colleen, April, I know I attended a session at Confab a couple weeks ago where they talked about bringing content strategists to the table, that they're so often left away from the management table, and how do you weasel your way in there?
Oh, sure.
So for me at McKesson, I tell you, it's been a really hard road, even as a private company. We're so accustomed to anybody being able to create content, and we think that everybody can write. Shake your head no. They can't. And so fortunately what happens is we get really bad content, and I use it as ammunition. And I say, look, our customers have access to this. We need people who know how to write and how to convince people, how to compel people to do things. One of my first interactions at McKesson was with an enterprise architect, and let me tell you, I loved it because he got it. He understood why we needed to be at the table. So I would say get an advocate too. Get someone who knows about content, who believes in it as much as you do, so that you can go in as a partnership to say this is why you need us at the beginning of the process and not at the end. And even as far as testing something, I'm going down that path a little bit, but we know how in validation, user validation always happens at the very end. You're pulling people in and they don't know anything about the product. So it's important to have an advocate, but also to be very clear about why you can make a difference.
And I wholeheartedly agree with all of that, and I would just add two things. One, evaluating content in some way, assessing the impact in some way, and making the case for why the content is or is not having the impact, and what kind of time and resources and costs have gone into that content. That can go a long way to helping you get a seat at the table with management and speak in management terms. And something else along the same lines is picking an improvement or a change on a small scale that you can use as a pilot. And pick something that's kind of low-hanging fruit that would be able to lead to a nice success story. If you make a change here, then you'll reduce some support costs, or you'll have a big impact on savings of time and resources, or you will solve a problem that's been, kind of a thorn in the side of management. Whatever the case might be, it's different for every organization. But picking a change that you can make that can serve as a pilot, and then that you can turn into a success story and kind of take on a roadshow to management to help you win over that advocate and win over the support to make even larger efforts with content. I've seen that be very, very effective across all kinds of organizations, government agencies, nonprofits, private sector, you name it.
I was going to say, Peter.
I was going to say that. Thank you very much for mentioning that, because I have a great example of how that worked for us at McKesson, called deflection. We don't want people picking up the phone and calling 1-800-McKesson when they have an issue. So we get typically about 45,000 calls a year, but we also get almost as many in our knowledge base, people accessing our knowledge base. So what we did was we went to management and said, if we could get 10% of those 40,000 people to come to the knowledge base instead of picking up the phone, we could save you close to $2 million. They listen. When you talk in numbers like that, they listen, and you don't have to talk very much when you say $2 million savings. So,
and that's something that crosses public and private, boundaries there. I mean, governments are always looking for ways to save money, not so much make money, but if we can save, 50, 100 phone calls a month to the customer call center and have people interact over the web, it's going to be a big plus.
Yeah, and just a quick similar example in the government sector, CDC was having concerns about the volume of calls they were receiving at their call center about vaccinations for international travelers. And there was content on the CDC website in the travelers health area explaining, if you're going to X destination, these are the vaccinations that you need. But that content was not of very good quality. It also lacked some strategy. It was very difficult for people to get the answers to their questions from that content. It suffered from SME syndrome, where people sort of put everything they know about the topic on the website and think that's great content. So it's causing CDC, a lot of costs, expensive support calls to address the needs of international travelers. And so we worked with them to come up with a strategy, a different approach to the content that really got to the point, really emphasized what their users were looking for, and helped explain that in plain language. And that approach to content performed much more effectively, reduced the call volume about these basic vaccination questions, and save them costs in the process. So it definitely can apply to the government space as well.
Lisa, we had talked a little bit about content vetting earlier, about once you have a clean website, good content, how do you make sure that that stays clean and fresh? So, what you're in a position as a gatekeeper for content. What do you say to a staff member or a SME who wants to put something totally irrelevant or inappropriate up on the website?
Well, we work with them beforehand, and we usually have a pretty good handle because we do have a seasonal calendar. Most of our content is pretty static. We have a training calendar, an events calendar to keep things current, but most of it doesn't really change that much. We might have some trainings or some meetings or some events, and the information on the front page, we have the ability to change that out quickly, and I'm very excited about this because we recently switched from Lotus Notes platform to a SharePoint platform. So now there only was one person in the agency who could make any changes on the website, and now pretty much anybody can if they have the proper authority. So we work with them throughout the entire process, and we were able to vet it. And we're all on the same page. When we made this transition from Lotus Notes to SharePoint, we got the agency together and we got buy-in from everybody to explain. And right now we're figuring out what our mission is, how can our content support our mission, what information are we trying to get to the public right now. And we're in a unique position because GEMA itself really isn't a public-facing agency. Ready Georgia is to get Georgians prepared, and that's a whole different process. But GEMA, we mostly work with our county partners to get them the resources that they need. However, in a disaster, we have to be able to get that content up there, the life-saving information up there as quickly as possible. But before the disaster, I think it's important to work with your agency and make sure everybody's on the same page, get that buy-in from management so it trickles down. And then if they want to put something up there that's not really appropriate, you can work with them and say, well, maybe this would be better instead. What information are you trying to get out to the public? Is this the best mechanism? Maybe it's not belong on the website. Maybe it could be done a different means as well.
Absolutely. Great. This question is really for anybody to answer. April, we can start with you. Rachel is going to be giving a talk about SEO in just a moment after this. But we had a question from an audience member when they were registering about optimizing the website's visibility, and maybe even apart from SEO. What can people do to make sure that their website is out there and people know about it?
Peter, I'm probably the wrong person to answer. And the reason that is because we are an authenticated website. So you have to have a username and password to enter our site. Now, McKesson.com is completely open. We don't have that issue. But we're kind of lucky in that way. So we don't use any SEO. I mean, basically, we are post-sales activity. So customers think of us as an added value. They're like, thank you, McKesson. We're getting this added information that we know that they paid for it. So I don't have a lot to offer on that, but maybe these two other ladies would.
Sure. So I like the phrasing of that question, the visibility of content, instead of just limiting it to search engine optimization, because search and social are the two major gateways into content outside of people going directly to your site. So the key to visibility is to making your content play well with search engines, of course, most namely Google, and making your content play well with social media, making it easy to share, and making sure you've got your metadata set up right so that your images pull in easily, your meta descriptions pull in easily, and so on. So the real key, I would say, to both search and social, and we could get super technical, and I'm sure the talk after hours is going to get into a lot more nitty-gritty awesome detail, really is that content that is kind of behind the scenes. And in particular, titles, meta descriptions, image tags, alt text, all of that metadata combined is very critical. And so when you're planning for content, one implication here is you've got to plan for getting that metadata correct. So you've got to plan for writing it, thinking through it. It's just another piece or step in proper quality content creation. And I would say something that a mistake that I see time and again in this area is leaving that meta data as an afterthought. So, just plugging in, either not filling out, say, a meta description, or just plugging in the first line of the content, or repeating the page title or something like that, instead of thinking through how is your user going to see this metadata displayed in search engine listing results or in social media. How should you write that meta description so that it will pique their interest or help them understand whether this content is something that is right for them and help them decide whether to click and go further. So that's really the high-level key, metadata, getting that correct for both search and social visibility.
Lisa, Colleen had mentioned social. What role does social media play in your content strategy, both in engaging with customers, on Facebook and Twitter, and in your overall content strategy with your website?
Oh, it's critical to have social media. On our GEMA website, we don't have a whole lot of opportunity. Well, let me go back. On our Ready Georgia website, we have a blog that we update twice a month. And that's a great opportunity to get new users, to drive search engine optimization. We can tag keywords. We make it easy for people to share our blog in it. So that's been, using that to help drive social has been very helpful, as is our app. With GEMA, we don't have a way to keep our content real fresh. And like I said, we have training events. That's a lot of what changes. We have trainings, we have meetings, that kind of information. So really what really changes on our GEMA website is our Twitter feed. So we have that up there front and center so people can see what's going on. And we're able to post real-time information as well. So it's really critical to drive those new users. We even use it to link to pages that aren't often visited for websites. So if it's, for instance, Fire Prevention Month, seasonal observance, we can link to our house fire page on Ready Georgia. So we're able to drive users to pages that they might not necessarily find on their own. So social has been a real help for that. And we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have a YouTube channel. All of that has been very useful.
Great. April, Lisa had mentioned blogging. And that's been a subject that we get a lot of requests about from agencies. And they really don't know what to do. And so, the question I'll actually open it up to all of you is should agencies be blogging?
Yes.
Next.
Next. Yes. So at McKesson.com, we have several blogs. One of them is McKesson Home Care and Hospice.com. So they have a blog, and they actually have a writer who is contracted to write the blog on a weekly basis. They ask this person to come to events on a monthly basis, so they get to travel to these industry events to understand exactly what the pulse is of McKesson, and they come back and write on behalf of leadership. I would say that it's changed from thought leadership to driving people to download assets, right? Sales leads. We want someone to come to these blogs, download a piece of content like an ebook, white papers, and then ask for more information about our products. So I've seen a big shift in that, but certainly it's something that we do on a very regular basis with, I would say, 80% of our products.
I am going to give the typical consultant answer and say it depends. I'm a big fan of strategy first thinking instead of tactic first thinking, and that question of should we be blogging strikes me as thinking of tactic first. You know, is a blog something we should be doing? Well, I don't know. What is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? Who are you trying to reach? And there might be a variety of tactics that support or will help you achieve whatever goal or strategy it is that you have. And a blog might be one of them. And if you decide that a blog is a tactic that is important to your strategy, then you know everything you just described shows that it is a significant effort, and so you've got to have a plan for it. The last thing you want is to start a blog and have it die. Oh, excuse me. That absolutely will backfire in a number of ways. And so, you know, there are a variety of ways to reach people. It might be that, you know, updating your site and your social channels, maybe a select few social channels is sufficient. Maybe it's a combination of updating your site and leveraging the Georgia.gov blog for certain aspects of what you need to communicate and get out there, and that's sufficient. Or maybe it is that you need a dedicated blog. Maybe you need more than one blog. So, you know, I stress strategy because research has shown time and time again over the past few years that the organizations that are the most successful with content have a documented content strategy. They have something, a plan written down that's based on, you know, a combination of their organizational goals and priorities and their user needs and addressing that effectively. So, short answer, it depends on your strategy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And with Ready Georgia, we're always trying to draw attention to something. So right now it's hurricane season, so we're trying to educate people about getting ready for hurricanes. So when we created Ready Georgia and we talked about what content to include and whether or not we should have a blog, we developed an editorial calendar with all of the seasonal observances. So we went through tornado season, fire safety week, school safety week, whatever it may be, and then we decided how frequently to do that. And we've tweaked it. It used to be just once a month, but we looked at our views and we saw, okay, we have enough people who are reading the blog to warrant doing it twice a month. So we kind of tweaked it. So I think that overall it's been a big benefit because it draws attention to your specific observances or whatever you're trying to get the public to do, to get them to take action. It gives them something fresh to talk about. We have a lot of partners who work on our blogs with us, which is a great way to engage partners. Then they can share it with their followers and their viewers as well and get even more people to draw people to our website. So I would say yes, just make sure again that you have a process in place, you have somebody looking at it, make sure you update it frequently, and it's good to have that calendar in place beforehand.
Great. And we've mentioned the editorial calendar a couple of times today, and it's something that again is strategic. That's part of a content strategy. What would you say to someone who has absolutely no idea what they're going to be publishing tomorrow, much less 2 or 3 weeks down the line? How do you get that started?
So one way to get the juices flowing in terms of ideas for what should be filling out your editorial calendar is to, as you mentioned, take a look at events that are happening within your agency or organization. There's usually some good fodder for content leading up to that event and afterward. Also, looking at priorities for the agency or the organization, that usually can lead to some interesting topic ideas. And then also looking at any kind of data or insight you might have as to what your users are asking for from your agency, or what content on your site they are consuming the most. Those kinds of things can trigger some good ideas for what should be filling out your editorial calendar. I find with editorial calendars for features or blogs, that kind of thing, that very personable, briefer kinds of content, more concise kinds of content tend to perform better. There are exceptions, but you probably aren't wanting to plan big manuals as part of your editorial calendar. So thinking a bit about the format that you're going for with content can be useful in thinking through your editorial calendar as well.
Thank you. At this point, I want to just open it up to the crowd and see if you all have any questions. I can run around and play Phil Donahue and get the microphone in front of your face. Does anyone have any questions for the panel? Yes.
I have a question for Lisa. I work for GSP, and with the law enforcement, it's always hard to put the information whenever there's emergency situations like winter storm and all those kind of things. So how do you? I think you already answered that question, but how do you, in the emergency situation, how do you put out the information what your agency employees are doing for the public?
Oh, well, we can help you with that. So, yeah, actually, that won't be your problem in an emergency. Everybody will be looking to you to find out what's going on. And I think it's important to be proactive and make sure you update your front page of your website as frequently as you can with the information that you know. And even if you're not sure what's happening, for instance, there was an earthquake a couple years ago. It was in South Carolina, but it was pretty big. It was like 4.0 on the Richter scale, so a lot of Georgians felt it as well. And we didn't know, it hadn't been confirmed by USGS yet, but I think it's okay to say we're aware that we're investigating it, possible earthquake, we'll get more information as soon as it becomes available. So you really have to stay on it, and that way it'll continue, it will build confidence in the public for you. But really, we're here to help augment your message. So if there's a major disaster, we would all be working together to make sure that we have a unified voice, that we have the same message that's getting out to the public so they know what you're doing. And we can help you with that as well. But I think the main thing is not to be afraid of social media. And I know that some agencies are new to it and they're afraid. And you don't want to release sensitive law enforcement information, obviously. But there's many other things that you can talk about before you have an incident, like seatbelt safety or anything like that. And then during an incident, the main thing is, again, you have to be quick, just acknowledge it, you're getting more information, and we'll help you. But that will be the least of our numbers go so much higher when there's a disaster. People are always going to our website and to our social sites. So that won't be a problem. It'll be a bigger problem is how do you correct misinformation that's out there and make sure you're getting accurate information out there as quickly as possible. And that's the beauty of social media, is that it enables you to do that without having that media filter. It used to be you'd have to wait for the media to come and beg them to tell your story, and now you can do that through social media. And you can also monitor what people are saying, so if you hear there's some misinformation out there, you can quickly correct that as well. So, sure.
Thank you.
I wanted to add to that just a little bit from a private sector. I'm just going to hold it right here. How about that? From a private sector perspective, our customers, they tell me when I come to industry events, they say, tell us what's going on now. If there's an outage that's affecting me, let me know as soon as you know. So it's just what you talked about. You can correct the information later if you need to, but let customers know as soon as possible when you know that we call them alerts in our business or notifications. So I think that's really important because, like you said, it engenders their trust to you. They know that if there's misinformation, you're definitely going to correct it.
Another question from the audience. Come on, this is your chance. Any questions? You can have experts in the field right here.
It's not as much a question, but a comment, and see what y'all think. In government agencies, there's scientists, there's political folks, there's engineers, there's very, very smart, educated people who don't really speak plain talk. Okay? And I see that it's very important to have your website speak in plain talk. But so how do you get through that barrier of making people understand that that it's important to have plain talk? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's a barrier.
Subject matter experts.
Yes.
SME syndrome. Absolutely. Yeah. Big problem. And so probably the most effective way I've seen to deal with that is to show the impact of the content that suffers from SME syndrome. And so that means evaluating content effectiveness with your users or audiences. And so I see different levels of evaluating content. Site Improve, which we just saw during lunch, I think is a great tool for assessing basic content quality, and along with other things about site quality. And that's important. You've got to have it. But if you could have very accessible content that is full of subject matter expert jargon, and that's not going to help you achieve your goals. So the next level of assessment is effectiveness or impact. And so that's really understanding whether the content affects what people think, the decisions that they make, or what they do, what actions they take. And so that CDC example I mentioned earlier, the content that suffered from SME syndrome was causing people to call in and ask questions because they didn't get it. So there's very empirical evidence that the content in which doctors insisted on explaining the history of malaria in order to advise people on whether to get a vaccination in China or not, that doesn't work. So that I find very smart people like that respond to data and evidence, and that's very, very effective with them. At the same time, you have to respect their knowledge. They do need to be a part of content, absolutely, and treating them as partners, viewing them as partners, helps with building good, effective relationships with them. And then, if you do that, then you can get to the nirvana of evaluating content, the pinnacle, which is ROI. And if you can connect the impact of your content to ROI, cost savings, revenue generation, what have you, then you will have the ear of management and SMEs and all the stakeholders involved. So that's really, it's a path that takes time, but that is the path that I've seen be most effective time and again.
I'm just curious. Oh, okay, yes. I understand, and it's funny you say that because I work with our hazard mitigation folks, and they're so smart and so technical. And I was talking about flooding and how to keep people safe during a flood. And the director's like, well, do you mean riverine flooding? There's like ocean flooding, there's this flooding. He's like, I don't even understand the question. And I'm like, all right, we have to convey the risk to the people. So it's hard to, it's good to talk to him specifically and say, okay, I understand and I get it, but public affairs is here. And that's why if you could talk to your public affairs folks and engage them in the process, that's what our job is, to take that content and boil it down for the public. And April and I were talking about technical writing on the way in, and that's the job of a technical writer, is to take it and even make it interesting so the public will be excited about flooding and wanting to be prepared. But I think it's important to engage them ahead of time and make them understand. I get it. Like, flooding is a complicated issue, but Right. We have to, okay, good. Then, yeah, then, and I get that, but we have to figure out, we have to go from here to here because we're all on the same page. We all want to protect people and save lives. So how can we take your expert and make somebody, like me understand it, since I'm in public affairs too. I'm not a technical person. So I'm like, if I don't understand it, then we're, we're in trouble. So
by the way, that is not a unique problem to the government. Okay? We have people at McKesson who have PhDs and above, and developers who try to explain things that say user authentication, and I'm saying, I know what that means, but most people don't, and that's not the language that we want to use. And I have 3 words. Well, actually, it's more than 3. Have a bias for plain language, no matter how smart you are, because your constituents, the people who are consuming this information, you want to get it across to them in a compelling way that they understand.
Great answers. Thank you. Yes.
I work for the Department of Revenue, and you all were talking about blogs. How do you think agency would benefit from a blog? I know you talked about it more, but do you think the employees would benefit from it more, or the taxpayers? How would they benefit from having a blog on like an agency like the Department of Revenue?
What I would do is investigate and look at what other states are doing. That's what we do a lot, is we look and see what kind of content is out there. And I don't know how. If you would have enough content to go every year, maybe once a month. It might not be twice a month, but there's probably something that you could talk about, whether it be like tax-free holidays or something out there that would generate interest, or maybe an educational process. But I would go ahead, it's the same. I would look at other states. I would look at what information seasonally that you can talk about beforehand, and and who your audience is. So would it be for the consumer? Would it be for small businesses or whatever? Or maybe you can do a little bit of both in there. But I defer to you all to see.
Also, if you want to talk whatever you
Good plug. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? We got time for probably 2 more. Well, I've got plenty of questions. I can continue on. Okay, good.
Hi, I work for the Holocaust Commission, so I know I'm very, very unique in saying this, and I don't know if this applies to any other agency or department, but we use an e-newsletter, and I don't know if there are any rules of thumb in terms of content that might translate to that. Like you talked about social media and how that can be incorporated. I don't know if anybody else uses newsletters, but we depend on that a lot because we have specific audiences like law enforcement who we have programs for, or Spanish language speakers. And we like to use that as a way to go to people instead of waiting for people to come to us. I don't know if there's any tips that you might have on how to make sure the content of the e-newsletter is consistent with your website and that type of thing.
Our electronic newsletter on a quarterly basis, so we do it, and whatever our we do it for hurricane season, I think for tornado season, but it mirrors what our website, we always kind of follow the same format. So we also get a new what's in their kit testimonial for our website. So for example, this most recently was our Director Butterworth. So we always kind of include our top story, which is hurricane season. Then we have another story, and then we have like what's in their kit testimonial. And it's another good way to drive traffic, some of those testimonials that aren't so new but are still sort of interesting. Like we have the oldest woman in Georgia, what's in her disaster preparedness kit. We got her testimony. We have like a little, a winner of our kids contest, like what from a kid's perspective. So we can reach these different populations, elderly populations and kids. So And we also make it really easy for people to sign up for our newsletter. So if you're logging onto our mobile site, you'll get a prompt. Do you want to sign up for our newsletter? Because we want to continue. We have about 8,000, so probably not as many as you did, and we're hoping to grow it more. But I think the main thing is to make sure you do it. You don't want to do it just to do it. Again, you want to have a strategy in place and make sure you have something to talk about. That's why GEMA doesn't have an electronic newsletter, because we really don't have a whole lot to say to the public, but Ready Georgia does. You know, we have a lot to talk about there. So we just make sure it follows our editorial calendar for our website. We have specific days we do it, and we make sure the copy is usually from the website or slightly tweaked, so it'll be the same. I don't know, you all.
I'll just add a quick item on there. In terms of email newsletters as a technique, definitely think they're worth considering just for the benefit of other agencies, because people who sign up for newsletters tend to be very loyal, very, very interested, very highly engaged. If they're giving you permission to enter their inbox, that's a big deal. So it's a big opportunity to reach them. And I would also say from a strategy standpoint, it's a good complement to your efforts to optimize visibility in search and social, because the algorithms for search and social and their visibility, they change. And you don't know, exactly how they're going to change. But no matter what happens with search and social, if you have an email list, you've got an audience you can count on. You've got an audience, a set of people that you know that you can reach. And that's a very, very valuable asset to have. So I do think it's important to consider.
Okay, anyone else? Question, great.
Hi, I work for DDS. I had a question. One part of the content management is to change the content of your website, and how do you evaluate that the content is really effective, or do you keep on changing it? How do you do that?
I'll talk about what we use at McKesson, which is Google Analytics. I love it because it arms me when people say things like, hey, April, I'd really like, let me turn around this way. When they say things like, well, hey, April, I'd really like to migrate this current content to a new page, I can look at Google Analytics and say, well, you know that we've only had about 25 people access that content in a month. That's not worth migrating. I, as I said, am armed with information to tell them about that. Also, I send out a dashboard to my leadership team on a monthly basis. So I think data speaks volumes. It helps you make informed decisions about content, as opposed to just kind of lackluster, not having a real strategy about how you do things.
I absolutely agree. And I had mentioned earlier kind of that pyramid of evaluating content or content measurement, and that foundation of quality, that is pretty easy to measure now, thanks to tools like Site Improve and others. And that's very, very important and valuable. These other layers of content effectiveness and ROI, those are much more challenging. And for understanding whether content is effective, you've got to have data about your users. What do they do, or what do they think about your content, and as a result of interacting with your content? And so we've seen a lot of organizations struggle with getting the right data together. Analytics is certainly a big part of it. Definitely look to those. But analytics are really focused on behavior, so they only tell you what people did. They don't really give you insight into what people think, and you really need that to understand why people did what they did, and you need that to understand how to improve your content, or what more specific decisions you can make to improve your content. So we've seen a lot of organizations struggle with this, and that's partly why we work to create ContentWRX. ContentWRX brings together insight from what people think from things like survey data and polls analytics, and puts them together to help assess content effectiveness based on content purpose. Like, are you trying to educate users or share thought leadership? Are you trying to support them with a particular, in a particular action, and so on? And so, you know, regardless of what tool you use, there are a lot of options in terms of tools. For effectiveness, you really want to get data about what people think through surveys, social sentiment, as well as data about what they're doing, most especially analytics. Anything you would add?
All right, I think that's about all the time we've got. I really do appreciate all three of you all for coming and helping us with this. I learned quite a bit, and I appreciate you spending the time to talk to us about content, and let's give them all a round of applause.